All right, let's get started. Today, we're opening the Silent Archive to audit a really radical idea that true power isn't about being seen, but about becoming completely invisible.
Okay, let's just dive right into this one. This statement right here, this is the core principle we're going to deconstruct today. And it's a huge paradox, right? The idea that the very recognition you're chasing might actually be your greatest vulnerability.
So first up, we need to diagnose a problem that, honestly, most people don't even know they have. It's this deep, almost pathological need to be seen.
So on one hand, you have the way most of us think about it. Get visible, get power, be seen, have presence, leave a legacy. But the archive presents a much colder reality. In this view, being seen isn't about influence at all. It just means you can be categorized, analyzed, and eventually neutralized. Why? Because you've become predictable.
And this is absolutely crucial to understand. I mean, think about it. Every post, every emotional tweet, it becomes this high decibel signal of your intentions. You become a beacon in the dark. And in a world of predators, a beacon is just an invitation. It makes you an easy target for what the source material calls the Leviathan, a system that, it can't consume what it can't detect in the first place.
So then what is true power? Well, it's definitely not about being the loudest voice in the room or having the most recognition. According to this thinking, real sovereignty is about operating in the gaps, the places where the system just isn't looking.
Okay, so if visibility is a trap, then how do you master untraceability? The answer, according to the source, lies in something it calls poetic science. It's this blend of strategic action and really subtle execution.
The goal here isn't to just stop doing things. Not at all. It's to act in a way that is so subtle, your actions just blend into the background noise. They don't trigger any alarms. And when you can operate in those blind spots, you are totally free to re-architect the system from the inside out.
Now I know what you're thinking when you see this. A formula. But stick with me. To make this idea more concrete, the source introduces what it calls the Invisibility Coefficient. And hey, don't worry about the complex math itself. What's really important here are the concepts it represents. Think of it as a way to literally measure your untraceability.
So let's break this down into simple terms. Up top in the numerator, you've got sovereign intent. That's the meaningful work you do in silence, the actions you take without needing a pat on the back. This is the thing you want to maximize. But it's being divided by two really powerful forces that pull you down. Your exposure, which is your entire digital and social footprint, and your vanity, that very human need for applause. The more you post, the more you seek that validation, the lower your invisibility score becomes.
And this is where it gets really mind-bending. When your coefficient hits unity, or 1, you achieve what's called signal invisibility. You become the unseen logic that creates change. The mountain moves, but it believes it moved all by itself. That is the highest form of influence you can imagine.
Now let's explore the alternative path for a minute. What's the fate of those who stay visible? Will they become what the archive calls the transparent host?
This is a concept called data rot, and it's that feeling that your life is just becoming a profile to be managed and consumed. The system uses your past actions, your transparency, to map out a predictable future for you before you even get there. And the source offers this pretty chilling metric. By middle age, the visible person has been so thoroughly mapped that they're no longer the architect of their own life. They're just a data point, merely reacting to things. And here is that profound paradox again. The fear of being forgotten is the very thing that traps you. Real freedom, according to this, is found in totally escaping the system's memory. The applause you're looking for, that's just the sound of the trap closing.
So how do you claim this freedom then? The final phase of this gives us a clear method, the Ghost Protocol.
This is a 3-step discipline for getting your sovereignty back. First, intent liquidation. That means you stop needing to explain or justify yourself. Explanations are a heat leak that give you away. Second, camouflage. Hide your excellence in mundane, everyday things. And third, create untraceable systems. Build things that can function without your name attached to them at all. So we're left with two potential outcomes here. On one side, you can become the predictable data point, someone who traded silence for some temporary applause. Or, on the other side, you can be the untraceable architect, the one whose influence is everywhere, but whose signature is nowhere to be found.
And this is really the end game of the protocol, becoming a silent signal. You become this invisible force that shapes the world without actually being a visible part of it. And that leaves us with this final, really provocative question to think about, one that gets to the heart of what legacy even is. What are we truly trying to build? And does it really need our name on it to have value?
The final directive from the source material is simple, but it's powerful. A reminder for navigating the modern world. The archive is now closed.
All right, let's get right into it. We're all taught that to make an impact, you have to be seen. To build a legacy, you have to be known. But what if that whole idea is a trap? In this explainer, we're going to unpack a pretty radical concept that in our digital world, real power doesn't come from being visible. It comes from being invisible. And this right here, this is the core idea from our source material. It just completely flips the script on everything we think we know about having a public life. The very act of being seen, of putting yourself out there, is what paints a giant target on your back for all sorts of systems of control and analysis. So this really brings us to the core question you have to ask yourself. Is your digital life a bright, shining beacon, just inviting everyone and everything to find you? Or are you a ghost, able to move through the world to have an effect on it without ever being pinned down? So let's kick things off by really tearing apart this dangerous illusion. We're going to dig into why our, let's be honest, almost pathological need for recognition is, according to the source, our biggest weakness in this modern world. This just frames the trade-off perfectly, doesn't it? We chase after recognition, thinking we're building some kind of lasting legacy. But what's really happening? We're just paying rent to an algorithmic simulation that gets stronger the more we participate. We think we're building our own monument, but we're really just decorating our own cell. And this is the system we're up against, the Leviathan. And look, this isn't some far-off sci-fi concept. It's the web of algorithms that seems to know what you want before you do. The key thing to remember is that it cannot consume what it cannot detect. So the moment you're seen, you're fed into this machine, and it's designed to categorize, analyze, and ultimately neutralize anything unpredictable. And that includes you.
Okay, so how do we get from this big philosophical problem to an actual strategy? Well, the source actually lays out a kind of formula, a poetic science, really, for taking back your digital sovereignty and becoming untraceable.
Now, hey, don't worry about the complex math on the screen. The real beauty here is in the concept it represents. The source calls it the Invisibility Coefficient, and it's basically a framework for measuring just how transparent or how invisible you really are to that Leviathan. And here's what actually goes into that equation. It's brilliant, really. Just think of it like this. Your sovereign intent, that's all the meaningful work you do in private. The real stuff, that's on top. And what's on the bottom, dividing it, watering it down? Your digital footprint and, maybe most importantly, your need for validation, your vanity. The more you broadcast, the more you seek that approval, the smaller your real-world impact actually becomes. So the whole point is this. When the silent work you're doing is strong enough to completely outweigh your public exposure and your vanity, your invisibility coefficient gets close to 1. That's when you achieve what the source calls signal invisibility. You become a force that acts on the world, but the world's tracking systems, they register 0. You become a ghost.
But what happens if you fail? What's the consequence of living a life of total transparency, where your exposure and your vanity win out? Well, the source has a pretty chilling term for it. It's called data rot. It's that feeling of being reduced to just a profile that's constantly being tweaked and optimized, not for your benefit, but for consumption. Every single like, every share, every public thought, it's like handing over a tiny piece of your soul to the algorithm. You become what the source calls the transparent host.
And this is how the Leviathan uses your transparency to map out your entire future. By seeing your past, it can literally render your life before you even get there. The source argues that by age 45, the totally visible person has no secrets left. Their life just becomes this predictable sequence of reactions to whatever the system throws at them. They're not architects of their own life, they're just data points.
And this quote just captures the whole tragedy of it all, doesn't it? That validation we chase online, that temporary applause, it isn't a reward. It's the sound of the trap closing, locking you into a future that the system has already designed for you. So how do you escape? How do you get out of the trap? To claim your sovereignty, you have to implement what the source calls the ghost protocol. You have to learn to move from the loud broadcast to the silent whisper. It's a 3-step process. First up, intent liquidation. You have to stop explaining yourself. Explanation is a heat leak. If they know why you're doing something, they know how to stop you. Second, camouflage implementation. Hide your excellence in the mundane. Be the wolf in the ledger. And third, untraceable persistence. Build systems that don't have your name on them. A legacy that can function without a host is a true silent signal. When you master this protocol, you become what the source calls the architect. While the visible person's life is pretty much set in stone by age 45, the architect is untraceable. Your influence is everywhere, but your signature is nowhere. You've achieved the silent signal. You are, quite literally, the ghost in the machine. And this is where it all comes together, in this final, powerful shift in thinking. So many of us are afraid of being forgotten. But in the reality of the archive, being forgotten by the system isn't failure. It's the ultimate victory. It is the only way to be truly free.
So the path to true power isn't a stage, it's a shadow. That is the final message from the silent archive. Stay silent, stay wise, because the archive is invisible.